Gaokao, the national university entrance exam in China. If you're not familiar with the term, Gao means high and Kao means exam. For almost every student in China, it is the most important exam that they will ever take, a once-in-a-lifetime event that can decide their future. The exam results can determine which universities that they're able to attend and what career opportunities may be available to them. Gaokao is widely considered as one of the most challenging and competitive exams in the world. Students must compete with millions of others across the country for a limited number of spots at top-tier universities. In order to have even a chance of competing with countless others, students must devote months, if not years, to preparing for the exam, sacrificing sleep and leisure time in the process. And if they succeed, their future suddenly looks brighter than ever, with plenty of opportunities to be accepted by top universities and pursue a potentially successful career. However, if they fail, the consequences can be devastating. They will either have to try again next year or forever say goodbye to their university dreams. This puts not only heavy pressure on themselves, but also their families. As someone who has experienced this exam, I can tell you that during my teenage years, everything I did was a build-up for this test. But when I failed, it haunted me and still gives me nightmares even today. It was not only the result itself that scared me, but the consequences I had to face, a missed opportunity that I couldn't bear to lose, and more importantly, it forever changed my life. Want to know how? Make sure to follow along with me to the end. Gaokao covers a wide range of subjects. Chinese, mathematics, and English are mandatory for all students, while they have the option to choose between science-oriented subjects like physics, chemistry, and biology, or liberal arts-oriented subjects like history, politics, and geography. The exam questions are mostly multiple choice or fill-in-the-gap style questions, with a maximum score of 750, which is nearly impossible to achieve. Out of roughly 10 million candidates who take the exam each year, less than 1,000 are able to score above 700. In 2022, the average score for the exam was around 400 overall, making achieving a score of 600 or higher a remarkable feat. In China, there are 3 tiers of universities, with Tier 1 universities considered the best of the best and at the top of the pyramid. To gain entry into these universities, students usually need an overall score above 500, and less than 5% of all students are able to do so. And to be able to get into China's best universities, such as Tsinghua University and Peking University, they would need to score at least 600 overall. Tier 2 universities, while less prestigious, still offer decent resources and qualifications, with students typically needing an overall score above 450 to qualify. However, the majority of students typically end up at Tier 3 universities, with a required score of 360 to 450. Those who are unable to gain admission into Tier 3 universities often choose to attend professional colleges or give up on their pursuit of academic dreams. So what's the difference? How do these tiers compare? Let me be straightforward with what you can expect. Tier 1 universities have the highest reputation and the best resources, and graduates from these universities have a way better chance of obtaining high-paying jobs, such as managers of large companies or professors at research facilities. Graduates from Tier 2 universities, on the other hand, may still find jobs, but they will likely need to study hard and obtain good grades to secure office-based positions. For Tier 3 university graduates, unfortunately, finding a decent high-paying job is nearly impossible, and for students who are unable to get into universities, The future holds the highest degree of uncertainty. They may end up working as manual laborers in factories or have no job at all. Alternatively, they may become freelancers working from home or as food delivery drivers. But in reality, they would have to work long hours and make very little money compared to those who work in offices. Now that we have a clear understanding of the purpose of Gaokao, the question remains, just how difficult is it? To give you an idea, Chinese high school students typically spend 12 hours a day studying for 3 years. During the final year of high school, they need to increase their study time by an extra 2 hours per day, bringing the daily average to 14 hours. Due to their rigorous study schedule, students usually have limited free time for any form of entertainment. Mobile phones are not allowed at school, and they cannot watch TV or play video games at home. And parents are required to keep a watchful eye on their children at all times. During classes, teachers constantly remind their students that if they don't study hard, they will end up as losers. Yet, even with such an intense study regime, only a mere 25% of students are privileged enough to attend decent universities. And for the top universities, the competition is extremely fierce, with millions of students across the country competing for a limited number of spots, hoping that they are the ones to get into the best universities. In fact, the competition is so intense that some students resort to extreme measures to gain an unfair advantage, such as using cheating devices or hiring professional test takers to sit the exam for them. There are several reported cases each year for cheating in Gaokao, despite its rigorous invigilation system. It's also worth mentioning that each province has its own set of test questions with different levels of difficulty. For example, Beijing and Shanghai are generally considered to have the easiest exams among other provinces and cities. The entry requirements for students from Beijing and Shanghai are much lower compared to, let's say, Henan province, which is the most populated province in China. As a matter of fact, despite the insane difficulty of Gaokao, most students and their parents must persevere through it. For some of them, the preparation starts as early as middle school. In order to get good grades on Gaokao, students must attend high schools with a reputation for sending high numbers of students to top universities. However, getting into these high schools is not easy, especially for students from poor families who lack the financial means or personal connections with school officials. Therefore, they must study extra hard during middle school and hope to achieve good grades on their middle school exams. But this is far from enough. Besides studying at school and at home during weekdays, most students have to spend their weekends attending after-school tutoring classes to further solidify their knowledge. Since these classes are often not cheap, with high-quality tutoring institutions usually charging up to 200 RMB or $30 per hour, many parents need to spend a large portion of their income to support their children. According to a Chinese media report, a father spent nearly 400,000 RMB or $57,000 on his son, hoping that he could get into a university, even a tier 3 one. During that time, he searched desperately for the best tutors and teachers, and without a second thought, he was willing to pay any amount required to help his son. Unfortunately, his son failed to accomplish his seemingly simple wish, and when the results were delivered, the entire family was devastated. However, this is only just one case, a tip of the iceberg. There are numerous other parents that spend money, time and effort on their children, simply giving their all to support their children's university aspirations in hopes of changing their family's fate. All of the mentioned scenarios highlight the financial burden that can only be afforded by families with above average income. But what about the poor? Those who don't have the financial means or resources, living in remote mountainous areas. I hate to say this, but educational resources are massively unevenly distributed in China. with major cities such as Beijing, Shanghai and Guangdong having the most abundant resources, best teachers and best study facilities, among other advantages. Meanwhile, in remote areas or small cities, educational resources are severely lacking, and some children even have to walk through mountains to attend school, all while lacking access to basic necessities such as food, clean water, or clothing. In truth, many of these children won't even have a chance to attend Gaokao, not to mention get admitted by universities. The question that keeps tormenting me is this: is Gaokao really fair? On a large scale, it seems fair to a certain degree, as it provides an equal opportunity for students to gain higher education. Anyone who attempts Gaokao has an equal chance to get into their dream universities, because the scores don't lie. It also serves as the only opportunity for poor families to break out of poverty. However, with many intricacies such as unequal distribution of educational resources, varying levels of difficulty, and unequal admission rates for different cities and provinces, it no longer seems fair. Why is that students from the least developed provinces, despite having the highest population, are required to take the most challenging test, only to discover that they have the lowest chance of even getting into universities? Meanwhile, students in Beijing have an easier test and better chances of getting into top universities. The reason for this lies in the government's desire to ensure that local students in their province have the best resources and advantages over students from other provinces and cities. These provinces often generate the highest GDP, and the government wants to provide some sort of privileges to the local people and their children, while keeping out of the so-called low-end population from other less developed provinces or cities. This logic also applies to Tier 1 cities such as Shanghai, Guangdong and Shenzhen. This practice has persisted for decades, and people have come to accept this harsh reality. As harsh as it may sound, most students spend countless hours memorizing, revising, and practicing exam questions, sacrificing what are supposed to be the best years of their lives, their teenage years, for the sole purpose of achieving a good score. The question is still unanswered. Is it fair to them? As someone who has experienced all of it, I used to blame myself, asking, why did I fail? Why didn't I study hard enough? Am I stupid? But years later, I've finally come to the realization that I am not the one to be blamed. It's the society that is to blame. Because just like myself, there are millions of other students each year also fail to achieve their desired results due to factors beyond their control. The unequal distribution of educational resources, the unfair advantages given to students from certain provinces or cities, and the overwhelming pressure by society are just some of the factors that contribute to this unfair system. Are they not smart enough? Or do they not study hard enough? If you believe that to be the case, then you're wrong. Because not only are the test questions designed to be unnecessarily hard, but the real-life application of the knowledge learned from such a rigorous regime is mostly unrelated. Unlike admission tests in other countries such as the UK or the US, Gaokao is not designed for improving students' useful abilities like creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving, but rather a test designed for selection and elimination purposes. It operates like a pyramid, where the majority of students are not selected, and only the few at the top of the pyramid have the privilege of studying at decent universities. SAT, on the other hand, a standard university admission test in the US, is designed to identify students' natural talents and match them with an appropriate educational environment to explore their potentials in different areas. Now, here's the story about myself. I grew up in China and spent my entire adolescent years there. Just like any other middle school kid, I would go to school at 7:30 in the morning, and finish at 7 in the evening. After dinner, I would have to study for an extra 2 to 3 hours to finish my homework. During this time, I also attended 5 different after-school tutoring classes. Since then, I began to hate the idea of studying, as I felt unbearable pressure from my teachers, classmates, and parents. Could you imagine a 13-year-old kid having to study for 15 hours a day, and all the words that were tossed around were, "You need to study hard." And if I didn't, my parents would shout at me and sometimes even beat me up. What actually broke my heart was that my parents would compare me with other kids, saying that "You're worthless, look at the neighbor's kid, just scored the top score on the monthly exam. And now look at you, only just a pass. How shameful." The situation got way worse after I graduated from middle school and attended a boarding high school for 3 years. For the best part of those years, I had to study at least 15 hours a day, if not more. However, the subjects were just not appealing to me, and I wasn't particularly motivated. With negative emotions towards studying, I couldn't go really far, and my grades were falling off exam after exam. From there, it became a snowball, and I went from a top-of-the-class student to an average student in my class. My teachers would give me regular talks, and my parents would send me to more after-class tutors. But it changed nothing. In the last year of my high school, things got out of control. Somehow my parents were so convinced that the decline in my grades was all because I would stay at school for weekdays and would only come home for weekends. So I was told to come home after school every day so that they could keep a watchful eye on me. This solution was later proven to be ineffective, and that year was literally the worst year of my life. How so, you ask? The pressure. The pressure to not fail monthly or midterm tests. The pressure to not disappoint my parents, because if I did, they would lose their face in front of their friends or colleagues, and what shouting and beating up would follow. I became extremely demoralized and demotivated, and this eventually had led to an inevitable failure of my Gaokao. After receiving the result, the whole family was shocked, followed by a long-lasting silence. For 3 days, my parents wouldn't talk to me, and I locked myself in my room. Didn't want to eat, didn't want to talk to anyone. The shameful feeling kept spinning in my head and wouldn't go away. At night, I couldn't sleep because as soon as I closed my eyes, the image of Gaokao would just come up in my mind, haunting me and reminding me of my failure. I would toss and turn in my bed, trying to force myself to sleep, but my thoughts would keep racing, replaying every mistake and every missed opportunity during the exam. I felt like I had let down not only myself, but also my family who had sacrificed so much for me. The pressure of Gaokao had taken a toll on my mental health, leaving me feeling exhausted and defeated. For a long period of time after that unforgettable event, I doubted myself as if I was the loser in the eyes of other people. Even these days, I still have random nightmares about the painful experience of Gaokao. But I know that I am not alone in this. Almost all of my classmates who failed to achieve their desired score have experienced the same hurtful feelings as I did. This is just a small example of a bigger picture though. Keep in mind that nearly 10 million students participate in Gaokao each year, but only a small portion of them is accepted by high-quality universities, and the vast majority of students struggle to fulfill their wishes. Although some students did eventually get the results that they wanted, then what? Isn't there more important aspects of life which are far more important than just the mere score of Gaokao? Why has society failed to see that? The answer lies in the deeply ingrained perceived values of Chinese society, which emphasize so very heavily on academic achievement and social status. In a society where success is often measured by people's educational background and career prospects, the pressure to perform well on Gaokao is immense. Parents, teachers, and even the government all reinforce the idea that the only way to achieve success and social mobility is through a good Gaokao grade and admission to a prestigious university. To make matters worse, like my own story, a recent and extreme example of the pressure and consequences of Gaokao is the story of Hu Xingyu, a 15-year-old high school student who disappeared from his class and was later found to have committed suicide. This tragic event created a huge controversy in China, with many people questioning the school's poor surveillance, the government's inefficient searching ability, and lack of transparency in trying to cover up the facts to protect their image. Although many voices have been spoken, it is surprising to me that no one seems to question Gaokao or the education system itself, despite the immense pressure and stress it places on students. On Hu Xingyu's social media, he posted some heart-wrenching messages before his death, expressing that he could no longer endure the pressure. These messages were ignored. No one took them seriously, as it was believed that he was just experiencing an emotional breakdown, which was considered normal for many students in China. Therefore, no one had foreseen that he would end his own life. The education system creates the belief that Gaokao is the only important factor and that students and families should focus solely on achieving success in this exam. But this narrow focus on academic achievement also comes at the expense of other important aspects of life, such as creativity, emotional intelligence, and interpersonal skills. Many students who excel at Gaokao struggle to adapt to the challenges of the real world, where success is often determined by factors beyond academic performance. It's not uncommon to see best students fail in their careers, despite having been able to go to top universities. It is important for the Chinese society to realize the flaws and limitations of this system, and to prioritize on developing a more well-rounded education that prepares students for the challenges of the real world. Only by doing so, we can help them to become truly successful and fulfilled individuals, and not just test-taking machines.